Most people have heard of IPM, Integrated Pest Management, and a lot of people utilize it in their day-to-day cultivation of plants. Because I get so many questions about it, and it's a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, I wanted to develop a video series that went over some of the operational and strategic aspects of IPM, both at a small and at a large scale, because the aspects very much change depending on what your environment is and what the circumstances are in which you are cultivating. By necessity, this video series cannot be exhaustive. The different pests, crops, circumstances like regulations, environment, and so forth make it impossible for me to be specific about every single situation, but I can go over the important subject matter. To start, I want to talk about the 5 fundamentals of IPM, as I like to put it, and a few other people on the internet have also put it this way as well, so I'm not unique in this way by any means. The 5 fundamentals are biological, chemical, cultural, genetic, and mechanical pest control. Biological controls require the use of a living organism in which to be effective. This would include arthropods like insects and mites, as well as microbial organisms like beneficial fungi and bacteria. They're probably the most popular of the IPM system, and they're probably the most noticeable as well. Chemical controls rely on chemical agents in which to be effective. They are non-living, and there are 2 main groups. The first are things that are derived from living organisms, like botanical materials from plants and microbial materials from microbes. The other group are things that are synthesized in laboratories and facilities. Now, just because something is synthesized doesn't mean that it's going to be bad or more noxious than another compound that exists in nature very normally. At the end of the day, chemical agents are poisons and toxins by definition. There are 2 important terms to emphasize with regards to chemical agents, or pesticides. The first is translaminar. Translaminar compounds are those that, when they make contact with plant tissues, are able to enter into the plant's tissues and stay in one place. A systemic compound, on the other hand, when it makes contact with plant tissues, will move around in the plant's body. Cultural controls are some of the broadest and most important control measures, and I would describe them as the different techniques that cultivators can implement in which to indirectly control pest targets. Some example of cultural controls include watering at a specific time of day or harvesting in a specific way such that pathogens do not get into the crop. Genetic pest management is a part of IPM that most cultivators can't take advantage of in the field. However, it is nonetheless quite important. Genetic pest management mostly deals with the resistance and susceptibility genes in plants, and also the development of plants in such a way that they might encourage beneficial insects and other organisms to be attracted to them, and the repellence of detrimental organisms. Mechanical pest control measures are those that destroy the target in a physical manner. They do not rely on living organisms, nor do they rely on chemical agents to kill or poison the pest target. Mechanical pest control agents are things like lasers, ultraviolet radiation, and also physical destruction through culling or smashing. In some ways, mechanical pest control measures are both the simplest and most technologically advanced ways of dealing with pests and disease pathogens. For me, it can be helpful to divide the 5 fundamentals of IPM into 2 main groups, active and passive. Active group is the biological, chemical, and mechanical controls. These are things that are typically a direct way of killing or otherwise disallowing the pest organism from being in the crop, whether it's through control or prevention. The passive group is the cultural and genetic controls, and mostly this is because their way of controlling pests and diseases is indirectly, but they can be very, very significant, so they shouldn't be discluded just because they are not a direct or quick way of destroying a pest or pathogen. One of the reasons why cultural controls are so powerful is that they necessarily affect the fundamental ways in which pests and pathogens interact with somebody's crop. For example, the way in which somebody harvests a plant or the way in which somebody disposes of a plant will necessarily affect whether or not the pathogens or pests can reinfest a crop. They also control whether or not a pest or a pathogen is able to enter the crop in the beginning. So the way in which somebody does something is quite important.